Today's episode is with Jan-Adriaan, who's better known as Prop in the music industry. Prop is a well-known artist. He has a couple of hit songs like Quikey, and he is releasing a new song which is coming out in the week that's coming. So Prop has lived a very interesting life. He was born with an illness from birth. The illness is called skeletal dysplasia. We go into a lot more detail on how that has affected him by growing up and how his parents and family have treated him into becoming the person that he is today. Prop is also a professional architect. He also has his master's in architecture. So this was all around a very interesting podcast. He's an avid reader, and with that, it makes him very knowledgeable on a bunch of topics. And I really enjoyed this episode. I hope you enjoy it too. Jan-Adriaan, or more known as Prop, welcome to Challenge to Champion. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you being here, coming to talk to me. And I'm very excited for our conversation, man.
Yeah, thanks, Larue. Thanks for having me. And I'm also excited to get philosophical and just have fun and speak about life.
I'm very interested to hear your philosophical take on life, especially you also, your whole life living with some challenges that a lot of people don't ever see in their life. I've had a couple of years, maybe 4 years of experience of having some life challenges, being a little bit different. And of course it comes with its challenges, although it looks like you just roll with it.
Yeah, my take on it sometimes is that sometimes I feel that it's perhaps more difficult for somebody at an older age when an accident happens and then you are challenged or soos hulle in Afrikaans sal sê, jy moet mos reg sê, jy leef met 'n aangepaste leefstyl.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's for me. I didn't have to adapt. I was born like this. Just as a backside for the people that don't know, I was born with pseudoachondroplasia. Pseudoachondroplasia. Now, full achondroplasia is dwarfism. It's full dwarfism. So all your skeletal joints grow smaller, and especially they grow compacted. So the ends are very compacted, and they don't grow out. They just stay there. So that's why the torso of a full achondroplasia person is also smaller. But I have semi. So pseudo is the medical name for semi or half. So what happens with me is just my end limbs. Usually, so you can see like my arm, this bone grew a lot, and this one, the forearm. This one, the outside, the tibia grew a lot, and the fibula grew a lot, and the tibia grew shorter. So then that's why I had a lot of operations, but they just didn't grow equal. But my torso is not affected at all. It's just my end, where all the joints are basically. But my torso is fully developed, as they can say. Yeah. The two things to note about pseudoachondroplasia compared to full achondroplasia is that you're only detected by the age of 3-4 there around. Because then you will see the difference in growth, because it's like a small plant. You can't see that one has a defect. It just happens that way. So that's what I was born with. My mother and father didn't know that I had it. But at the age of 7, the reason why my fingers, some of my digits are gone, is I had septicemia. Now, septicemia, as some of you might know, it's like a virus. You get it through a cold usually, and then it's a brain
derived.
It's like I'm going to say inflammation. It's like a brain. I can't remember what you call it. It goes into your brain. It's a cold that goes into your brain, and then you get it, and it goes into your bloodstream. Now, septicemia is an extremely dangerous disease till today's age. There's people over 25, 30 that doesn't survive it. At that stage of medicine, to 1987, when I was 7 months old, I was the first child internationally that survived this illness. Because what happened is, I was lucky that the infection, the septicemia, just went into my bloodstream just below the skin, and it spread there for some reason. But what happens then is it goes everywhere over your body, and it goes into your organs, and then you basically just swell because it's infection everywhere. And I was lucky for the first thing that it didn't go directly to the organs, only into my skin as an organ, and it spread everywhere. That's why I have all these letsels and stuff, blotches and stuff. And what happened is there was a plastic surgeon. There was also a kinderdokter, is it a pediater? I can't remember now. Pediatrical doctor that said, this child, it seems like there's nothing wrong with the organs, but he's going to still, the skin is so swollen, just cut and let the child bleed out, and then you do blood transfers the whole time. So I had like 4 to 6 blood transfers daily. These stories from my mother, my father and my uncle driving around town in Gauteng to get enough blood of my type to transfer. I was in intensive care for 3 months. So that's the reason why I had, and I think the biggest thing to take from that is that the community that stood together praying for me, helping my mother, the work, my father didn't even take off his leave days, that sort of a thing. It was a whole community that stood together to save this child's life, and lots of prayer, lots of casseroles being brought and taking care of my family. So that community sense, I've grown up because we are a big family in Witbank. My mother and father, my father has 5 brothers and 3 or 4 children, each of them. So all my cousins and nephews. I grew up in that sense of community, and I think that's my takeaway from it, is that with prayer and with community and with assistance, anything can be overcome. But obviously, prayer helped a lot in this stance as well, because it was absolutely a miracle that I'm here today. And that's so people just know a little bit about myself and my background and where I came from and how I look, like I look. But to come back to the conversation, is that I've never seen myself as there's an instance that I should have adapted my life. I just grew up this way. So I have adapted lifestyle, but for me it's normal because I didn't have to. There was no switch for me being able to adapt. So it's quite a different thing for me. It's actually interesting to go into the conversation and what's different between. I've had some with other people that's in a similar situation than you that had to adapt, and I think it's for me it's more a difficult thing because I don't have like what the phantom feeling of my fingers, because I was 7 months old when I lost them. Basically, for that septicemia, you're very little, and there's very little bone in there. It's just flesh, and it basically rotted out of the sepsis and all that. So for me, I don't feel that I don't see myself will get baptized into the conversation for the first time when I realized that I was actually am challenged in some sense, and I had to accept it, which was a very good thing. At a certain stage, I had to accept it, and it changed a few things in my life, not much. But what I think is the thing that helped me the most in life is that circle of community with all my cousins, because they never treated me differently, although there was times that everybody had to come and visit me instead of me going to them, or I had to sit on a stoop in a wheelchair, because with achondroplasia, you basically, when this bone grows too much, the doctor has to stop that one or put something in to strengthen this one, or he has to help my knees keep it aligned with spokes and stuff so that my knees grow right. So I had quite a lot of operations. I think my mother counts them more than me, but it's 19 times from the age of 0 till 21 that I was in the theater. And sometimes they would do a knee, an ankle and an elbow to just keep me aligned. They say it's just a strike what die dokters moet regheid bygeheel het. Otherwise I grow skew. So that's where I come from, and how I am different and challenged. But as said, on a psychological level, I've never seen that. But there is a stage where an interesting story that I would like to share with you, that of how I thought I needed to change my mindset in business and in life and as an adult, so to just see things a little bit different to help myself.
Yeah, but you're more than welcome to go into that story. I'm very intrigued.
So what it is I was in a commune. I stayed in a commune after school. To fast track my story a bit. After school, I was I was traveling with Robbie Wessels as a session musician, a bassist and an acoustic guitarist. So I traveled all over. But since high school, I had always had the dream of songwriting, and I wanted to be a famous rock star songwriter, because that's you're a kid. That's what you want to do. Even though you just want to be a rock star. It's not that you want to have a good message, so there's no specific intent. I just want to be a rock star. But anyway, so I traveled all around the country, studied a bit of music production just out of school, And then I started jamming with Robbie for 10 years, from 2007 till 2016. And during that time, I stayed in a lot of different communes, kept writing my own music, but traveled on weekends. And I think it was at the age more or less about 25. The one thing that happened, beside this, the story that I want to tell, is that I broke my collarbone at the age of 25, skateboarding, where other people is just finished their studies, getting married, starting to have children, and I realized
Not picking up skateboarding as a sport.
Yeah, but I did it. Actually, I did it in high school as well. But then I did it for lots of years. I didn't do it, and then I started doing it again out of boredom, which was not a good sign. And the instant that I broke my collarbone, something else snapped in my psyche, saying that, listen, man, you're here lying in the middle of Joburg on a Wednesday morning. Other people are grafting their asses off, trying to make a living for them and their family, doing something meaningful. And you think you're still on this bandwagon of wanting to be a rock star and write songs, and you hope that one day you're gonna write the next big hit and become a rock star. So something told me that I really need to do more. Obviously, the fact of booze and all that things also had an impact. And I think it was that started me on the journey to what am I? How is I as a person, my personality and the skill set that I have, how can I possibly either go study something or get into another trade or something to really make a difference in life, not just wanting to be a rock star and becoming something. Because obviously the booze and everything and the chillaxing and reading, throughout all of those years I loved reading a lot, but more fiction. Dalian Mattia, Dion Meyer, I'm an avid reader, and we'll also get to that later. But then what happened is, I think it was like 3 or 4 months after that incident, there was one of the guys in my commune that sat me down, because he saw me struggling with something psychologically. So what he told me is that, because we got into a lot of these conversations of what's my next step. I am talented as a muser, but sometimes you need more. You need something meaningful to contribute. And what happened then is that he sat me down and we got into a long conversation, and he wanted to pull some sort of analogy to make me realize that I am physically disabled, because on a psychological level I wasn't disabled for myself, but he wanted to make me realize what's different in how people see me differently than I see myself, and I need to realize that. And if you don't realize that, then you're putting yourself on a back foot, because if you think that all of life is equal, you need to, even people's hair color different, as differences for as an example, and that sometimes people need a blonde actress instead of a brunette actress, and you have to accept those sort of things. So you have to accept that you're different before you can actually just apply for the brunette. Yes. Because you're a brunette. Otherwise you're going to think, why don't they choose me, and just because your hair is not blonde. So he sat me down and we talked, and he said, if you're in a race with 1,000 other men, and they say, okay, no, cool, we give you 10 chances, 100 people at a time, and you run. Most of those times, because I'm physically challenged, I would not be in the top, let's say, 80%. I would be below. And then I was like, yeah, but okay. I don't see it totally. And then he said, okay, now see yourself, that is the race of business in life. You're a CEO, and you interview 100 people, or let's say, for make it easier, 10 people, and you are a CEO that likes to do some sports. You have an avid lifestyle. You like hunting and fishing and that sort of thing, and you see that the people that's employed with you must also have the same sort of characteristic to drive your business, drive your business and mingle. And then I was like, okay, cool. So I go for that interview, but he said, actually, imagine that you're going for an interview against 10 people. And I said, like, no, I have this personality and everything. I'll wing them over and whatever. And then he told me the story in hindsight. He told me, but remember, that guy is sportive. He likes fishing. He likes hunting. He likes to go running and jogging. You can't do that sort of stuff. Do you think for one moment that he's going to jeopardize his business and his whole family and his empire that he built up just because you have a nice personality? You have to show him that you have something else, something a little bit different than the other guy that's able to hunt, able to run. And it's not just about personality. It's about a skill set. It's about contributing something different to the company. And you as a person need to realize that you are challenged or differently abled. But what else can you bring to the table? You can't just bring a good personality to the table. What specific skill set can you talk to this CEO about so that he employs you above somebody that can contribute on a social level and talk business in the hunting field or while running or cycling over the weekend? And that made me realize that if I don't realize that the reason why I run the race, if I go into a normal race of 100 people, for 10 times, most of the times I'll be in the bottom 20 or the bottom 10. But that's not the point. The point is that one of those 10 races, I have to choose that it's my race. And I must realize that this is my type of race, because that race is not about being physical. That race, I have to know that now I'm running the race that I'm good at. And if you don't know that you're running the race that you are good at, then you're going to struggle, because you're still going to run the race the same style, exactly the same as the previous race. You think it's a physical challenge, so you're just going to sweat. Meantime, you have to realize that, hey, this is actually my sort of race, so I can adapt my style of racing or my style of conversation, because this guy or this CEO or this race is my sort of race. And if you don't realize how you're differently abled, or firstly realize how you're differently abled, and then realize that, well, your skill set fits in. You have to have a skill set first, and then your skill set fits into certain scenarios in lifestyle. So that's for me so that's the story, and what it snapped in my psyche is that whatever I do, I must make sure that it's something that I can really in the long term contribute. And I read up a lot about engineering, architecture, even psychology. I wanted to go study because I loved reading that much. And then I realized that architecture and sitting and designing, that's why I thought that you were the designer in your company, for example, because sitting and designing is something that you can do here. But then the other thing that I realized is that you have to talk a lot to people, either over the phone or on site giving instruction. You don't have to be the heavy lifter on site, being able to do everything yourself. Architecture is one of those fields that you can be creative in your mind, sitting, being alone, but as well you can communicate. And I'm a socialite, so I love communicating. And that aspect of it, I really realized that it's something that an engineer, for instance, also going to be on site that much, but it's more mathematical, creative. It's not like music. It's not. So I went to study architecture. Got my undergrad in 2015, 2017 honors. In 2019, I had did my master's. But from 2014, actually, because I went to study only in 2007, when I was 27, I started studying. So I realized that instant that I went into practice over the holidays and that stuff of the university, and sometimes even in the evenings, I realized that I enjoy this creative life, this creativity of architecture, but I also instantly started mingling with the younger people, being a sort of not a mentor, but just being that community once again that I had in my family when I was smaller, being in a community of people. And I realized that, I don't feel as if I am adaptations, because sometimes I would even go, I was on the road with Robbie, I didn't like going out that much, or when I went out, I usually drank a lot more because I felt out, because I'm shorter. Standing at a bar is awkward because you're now shorter. You have to tell somebody, hey, I want to sit there. Not that I have issues with it, but it was like I wasn't that comfortable in that sort of a social space in bars and stuff. It wasn't that comfortable. But I realized the instant I was in an office where I had a skill set to contribute, I can talk to people about architecture, design, and project management and that sort of thing. That's where I fit in.
And so, you're on the exact same level.
I mean, the exact same.
Because you can be as creative.
Yes, that was so. I found my little bit of space to do that, and so I went and did architecture for since 2014, 15. I did architecture, a lot of experience, and I worked at Earthworld, the company. I worked there for 5-6 years on and off. My wife also worked there, but the thing that I want to get to with that story is that I really, as a person that as a adaptive lifestyle, I think it's important that you realize that you are different, but that doesn't matter if you're different. You need to find the space where you fit in physically as a challenged or an other abled body. But psychologically, I think is more the important thing, is that you continually challenge yourself, getting in knowledge and studying, or even if it's not studying, just making sure that you're at a workplace where you can grow on a psychological and not a physical level, if you understand what I'm saying. So that switch and those two stories of breaking my collarbone and the guy telling me that, listen, you have to realize that you're running a different sort of race, and you have to find the races where you can compete. Because if you don't realize that, you can go through your whole life and sit and ask, why am I in this position?
Yeah.
But it's just about finding the races that you think you fit in and challenging yourself there. I think that's the more important lesson that I learned of that.
I think that's very valuable. I have two stories that amount basically to the same answer. The first one is I had a chat with Chappies, the guy who was on Survivor. I don't know if you're a Survivor fan.
He was me and him were VRL layers, and he was in my high school.
Okay.
He was just here before me, Francois Chapman.
Very interesting guy. I really like him. And he was speaking to me about having children. That was about a year and a half ago. I now have a 5-month-old. So I was really hesitant about how it would work. I am a physical guy. I was a very sporting guy. And because I had 28 years of being able to do all those things, like you said, now having to transition, that isn't me anymore. It was really difficult. And, a lot of abilities being taken away. But then he told me a very interesting thing, because I told him about the hesitance that I have. I won't be able to play in this way with my son. I won't be able to pick him up, throw him around, all of that type of things, which a dad wants to do. But he told me, do you know the amount of insight, life experience that you'll be able to give that child, which most other fathers won't be able to give? Just a bit of a perspective change. And that was really insightful to me, knowing the perseverance, the trials that I have to work through. Being able to teach that to your children is very valuable. And that mind shift is one that I had to make. And then secondly, like you said, being able to fit in. I've felt that I'm the construction type of guy. I like being physical, being productive, being active. And of course that changed. But now those are skill sets that I have already built. So it's a lot more difficult to transfer those at the age of 28.
Yeah, and when you get people that struggle with it physically, and you could have just done it on your own, you get frustrated on the side.
Definitely, 100%. That was a big challenge for me. But the way in which I did pivot is I became a much better talker. I could explain myself. I learned to explain myself a lot better, because I can't just take over and do it. I'm not able to. So I became very good at delegating and giving out clear instructions on site and in meetings even, because I know I have to explain myself very well for them to be able to do what I want done. So that is a way in which I've pivoted. Also, just another thing, like what you were saying about, just standing next to a bar, being the shorter one, that is it's a massive thing. And maybe other people say, no, man, we don't worry the fact that you are sitting and everyone's standing, but it's for yourself, even just being at a big concert, everyone's standing, you're sitting, it's awkward. It's not, it's an internal thing. And then you avoid those types of scenes. And it's a difficult thing to work through, because it's something that I did and that I had, and that has changed now at a later stage in life. So it's difficult things, but it's very valuable, what you're saying and what you have learned and what you have seen for yourself in your own experience. And I find it very valuable, and it's interesting insight.
I think another thing that you make me think about now is, while talking about your son, you have a boy, right?
Yes.
As congratulations, by the way. I was so excited when I saw that, because my son is now a year and 17 months now, so he's a year and 5 months. now old, and it's such a cool journey to do. But as you rightfully said, is that you learn to adapt. But what through my stage, the reason why I think I became inherently or automatically or naturally became a writer is because I became the observer. I'm busy writing a book currently together with my mother that hopefully will be out next year, 2005, halfway. But what I constantly and always have said is that I became the observer in situations, which is genuinely not a bad thing, because I could see when one of my cousins and perhaps my two nieces, one of them was irritated with the other one. I pick it up way before they even selves know that they're irritated. And so situational awareness. I became extremely observant as a child, because as a child, I think the difference is that I didn't know that I needed to express myself different than like you did. I just observed. So I picked up on other things. I picked up what happened in a situation, and I could tell my mother, listen, Pietie is kwaad vir Sunny, and sy gaan nou sê something's gonna happen. I would see situations way before they more emotional situations I would see way before that. And even physical, I would see things that other people don't see because you're busy and they move more than me. I would see those sort of situations play out, and I think that's why I became I wouldn't say I'm a good writer, but I enjoy writing more, because I can my visual intake and my analysis of things is just different than other people. That's what makes me uniquely me. It's part of my DNA over the years to do that. So it's interesting for me to hear that how you realize that you needed to adapt, or even I think it's a due process that you adapted and then you realize that you adapted more. And I think the instant that your tongue started relaxing and not being angst about now explaining to these people and realizing, hey, I'm getting good at this skill and it's something that I need to do, that's where you at a level where you can say, I have an adapted lifestyle, but I'm okay. I'm doing this thing, and I realize how it's different now, and I'm using it as a strength instead of a weakness. I think that sometimes when people are differently abled, for me, it's when you do that switch. If you never do that switch in realizing how you are different and finding your being active, because it's not going to come. I always say in religion, or I'm a Christian, but for me it's 50-50. You're not gonna pray for 10 minutes and then think God's gonna give you a blessing of an hour long. You're gonna pray for 30 minutes. And then the rest is going to be in his hands. So you have to always meet the challenge halfway. The rest is for me always a miracle that situations happen. But you have to realize that nothing in life comes from just sitting and thinking about it. You have to be avid in either getting a skill as a people with a different adapted lifestyle, and firstly realizing that you can't just go about things normally. That's not for people that's more directly, they just, like you had an incident and changed. But I think people like me that had it since life, there will always be, and there was different stages of this development as well, in realizing how your life is different. Because if you never do that, and then you would constantly have that other flip side of it, of being angry at what happened or how it happened. You've lost something. But it's actually such a cool challenge in reading up, or getting a skill, or getting a mentor that will guide you through things that'll make you see. I always say, well, most psychologists say it, or social media, or what do they call it? Self-help books say you are known by the 5 best people in your life, 5 closest people in your life. And for me, it has been since I studied at the age of 27, it was psychology and self-help books. That was one of my best friends. And I really learned a lot, and that helped me, because I was such an observer of things, to get into more depth about situations and life and all that. So I'm a reader, but if you're not a reader, it's not the end of the world. There's so many different ways. Join a disabled paddle club, where you can perhaps in a wheelchair do paddling, where there's people that do that. They've been doing it for 10 years or tennis or whatever, but it's not about doing that physical activity. It's about being in a community, a group setting.
Yeah.
For me, I was okay because from once since I was small, I was reading books. I was not reading books, checking TV, looking at a lot of documentaries and checking life out. So for me, it was okay to sit alone and do reading a lot when I was older. For some other people, their personalities are different, so they won't do that. So you must always realize what works for you. It doesn't mean that if it works for somebody else that it will work for you. It's your job to figure that out and do the churn to figure out what do I need to do to take myself to the next level, to not sit and sulk of my situation. And actually, I think it's good advice for people not even having an adaptive lifestyle. So even somebody that moved now from, let's say, from the Free State to Gauteng because their wife needed to work here, and now he's a husband alone here. It's your job as a person to always make sure that you're okay. It's not a pray and hope for a miracle. It's a physical inspanning, as you word what I call say. It's like you have to apply yourself. You have to apply yourself always, because if somebody doesn't apply themselves and they come to you and ask you ask totally the wrong questions. So it's like for me, I like to exam the instance you have masters at university, then you do crits at university, and I've done it for like 2 years now, where you go to someone and they have a 5-minute session and you crit their building project or their design project. And the instant somebody has something on the table to talk about, that exam is always good. It doesn't even matter it's the biggest bunch of crap and this guy doesn't have talent. As long as there's a bunch of stuff, there's good conversations. So you bring the bunch of stuff to whoever you want, even if it's the guy at the tennis pool table or the guy at the swimming pool that you swim. You bring something good to the conversation, and then you will be better off. But if you
have something to work with,
you have something to work with. Never just come to somebody and ask questions. And it's for any job. You can't say you want to study. Let's say I want to study being a teacher. And then you rock up at their school and say, I want to be a teacher. No, you need to have at least been reading a little bit and saying, I know that there's different phases. I want to focus on tertiary level, or I want to focus on kindergarten.
Yeah. Well, this is my interest. This is a big interest that I have, and this is what I want to teach people. How do I do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree with you fully. And I learned that I have to pivot. This podcast is one of my pivots. I would have never sat for an hour or 2 hours, not having a drink, and just chatting around.
You and Kamala Harris.
Yeah, I would have never done that. And I had to force myself to think, what now? This is now my situation. These are my abilities. This is what I can do. This is what I'm interested in. How do I now turn this to make my life interesting for myself?
Yeah.
I assume and I hope that I still have a long life ahead of me. Do I want to say, listen, you lived for 28 years, then this terrible thing happened, and then you were slowly dying from then? And I would never want that for myself. Even imagining myself being a 50-year-old or 60-year-old looking back, and then just knowing a switch went off, and I just stopped living. Yeah. And I don't want that regret later in life, because I already had regret when I was lying in the hospital bed after my accident. I thought about how many things I half-assed. I didn't give it my full attention. I didn't give it my full effort. Most of the things that I've ever done. And that was a big regret for me. And that was like a changing point. Listen, do things in a matter going forward that you won't regret it later. Just give a bit of full effort to what you are applying yourself to. And I think that has given me basically the okay mark to try. Listen, try. You will fail, but you will also find some things that you are better at that you didn't even know you are good at.
Yeah. It's making me think of, I don't know if you, I'm going to try and incorporate it in my book as well. I don't know if you know the art of kintsugi. It's a Eastern religious practice. It's not religious, but it's just a cultural thing that they do there. It's these the porcelain pots that if they break, they use golden glue to stick it together.
I've seen this.
So it's the working title of my book coming is Die Beautiful Bloody Kraker, because it's in seeing the beauty in something that's broken and mending it. It's that process of something that broke, and the time and the effort it takes to put it back together. That's where the beauty is.
And it sometimes become more beautiful.
It's more beautiful because now there's a story behind it. So, and in psychology, most people said, and entrepreneurship as well, people say, stop talking about it, just bloody well do it so you can learn the lessons. That's the only thing that's valuable. It's those lessons that you need to learn. Any good entrepreneur that's worth their salt, you'll talk to them and they say, like, what have you done so far? And they will chase you away when you've done nothing. Because you need to learn the lessons by applying yourselves. Even in your business, there's a lot of things. You need to make the mistakes. You need to make the mistakes, because the mistakes is the only thing that will direct you towards not making similar or the same mistakes at least. That's the only way you learn. I don't think the both in life and in work, there's another way to really learn. So that kintsugi for me is a very a deep philosophical, making an analogy of something visual that you can see. It's through those cracks that this thing is beautiful now. Also, it also makes me think about when I studied, I read about Thomas Aquinas. Is one of he was one of the in a monastery. He was one of the teachers there. And do you know the Thomas Aquinas school that you have today? He was like Dale Carnegie of the 1400s, 1300s. Yes. That was Thomas Aquinas. That's why you still hear from him today. He wrote a lot amount of books, and one of the books that he's written is on beauty. And I read that book when I was in first year, and it also made me realize something. And he studied beauty back in that day. So it's 600 years ago, but it still applies today.
Still relevant.
And he says the thing that makes something beautiful is the imperfections in it. Throughout all these studies and everything he read and all the people that he talked to, because he was a very influential guy, he said that the thing that makes something beautiful is most of the people realize the imperfections. It's like Cindy Crawford with a little mole?
Yes.
That makes her unique. This makes me unique. It's not as beautiful to some people, but it gives meaning to me, to my life, and that's what's beautiful about my life. So it's that little imperfections that we carry that makes something meaningful. And because he said the reason for that is because it makes it memorable. At 3 studies, he realized that that's the only thing that makes it memorable. Because if everybody is the same and everybody is normal, nobody's going to remember you. So I have to take that imperfection. I have to take what I have and make that into my story and my meaning. Similar like you have to take what you have and make that your story and your meaning. And if you don't do that, then you're going to fall away. I won't say it's the worst of worst, but then you're just going to be another. If you just see yourself as another person being having an adaptive lifestyle, then you're going to struggle a lot, because you're going to look for the answers in the totally the wrong way. You're gonna not see that there's beauty in this thing that happened to you. You have to realize that there's a reason for it happening. But now, after whatever happened, or that I'm different, and for me it was, as I always said, it was throughout life. Progressional things that happen, but I think for somebody at a later age that becomes disabled or you lose a limb or something, it's more instant. So I think people that in your situation, you have to read up a lot more. You have to force yourself to deal with that sort of literature or those sort of stories. It's way more difficult for me. Sometimes I say that I'm privileged that it didn't happen that way around, but I think it's the wrong way of looking about it. It's just two different sorts of beautiful, if you want to put it that way. Yes. And if you don't realize that it's two different sorts of beautiful, you just think that person's disabled and that person's disabled and that's all it is, you're going to really struggle. I think it's the most important thing is trying to find the beauty in it, because it is there. If somebody 600 years ago said that the only way that something becomes meaningful and rememberable is if there's a little bit of an imperfection in. Seriously, I think it doesn't take a rocket science to figure out that, I just need to find that piece of beautiful and put meaning to it, or create that meaning.
I think that is a beautiful philosophy. It's a great way to think about it. Tell me, just listening to you, I can hear that you're very deep, very thoughtful, very philosophical. Do you incorporate that into your music? Because I know everything that goes very popular, very mainstream, are your...
It needs to be tongue-in-cheek.
Yes, and it's your joke type of music.
Yeah.
Your new single, I don't know if it's released yet or it's being released.
It's on its way, yeah.
My
Sari Valley.
Okay. Yeah, so talk to me a bit about your way of portraying yourself to the world through your music. How is that thought pattern? How do you think about it, and how do you want to portray yourself?
Yeah, I think it's once again, it came a long way. I always saw myself as the grapjas, the
jokester.
The jokester, the hofnar, I can't remember the English name. It's actually cool for that, but I can't remember it now. But anyway, because I needed to make... My mother and father played a very good role, especially my father in this, and my mother, both of them. There's no... it's equally. That they made sure that life just went on, but that life is fun. One instance, there was like, I can remember, and I'll get back to my music now, but we were in Marloth Park. It's a place where there's a lot of animals and stuff, and there was there was somebody that built a Lapa house. So now it's this poles, and they started to create a house over it, and I was in a wheelchair, and I was in an A-frame, and how I needed to get, and I can remember this as a kid, how my mother and father treated that situation. I was in an A-frame and I need to get to bed and I'm tired and everything. And how do I get through this? Because you can't just pick me up. I need to go through. It's a space that's too small. I need to be wangled through to get to my bed to be able to sleep. And my father literally just picked me up and he said, all tied onto that A-frame. It's like two casts and an A-frame stick in between. He said, you now rev thy motorbike. Just take that thing, and when you get to there, then you turn it, and then we can ramp through this little gap. He made fun of it because that life should be that way. And that's an analogy for how my whole life was. If I fall, if I can't reach something and I let something fall, I usually say, well, tough, that's life. You can't say, oh, no, I can't get through this gap. I'm tired, I'm going through bed. If my father would have treated it that way, it would have never... it would have
influenced you in a bad way.
A very bad way. So... that's how I see my music, as well as, although I am live with a disability, I never see myself that way, but I always try in the situation, read situations, and I would call out somebody in the crowd if he does something weird, or if there's somebody with a bright orange thing, and I'll say, like, you're very bright, put off the sun, full of the sun net voor my gerawe. Then everybody looks at that. It's situational, that I, through my music, make sure that everybody's constantly aware of what's going on around them. That's how I try and apply it to the physical when I'm at concert and stuff. But in writing, I think satire, I became very good at satire because I'm so observant. I could see situations and create comedy situations. So that's why, like my Sari Valley and my other Kwaiki, all my other songs, it is like that. It's like a situation or a story that I twist and write to make somebody think about something. So my Sari Valley, everybody's obviously going to think it's my Sari wants to go to bed, she wants to do that, but it's not that at all. When you listen to the song, it's about somebody that went overseas and they now want to come back to South Africa and they want to get married and settle down. That's why my Sari Valley, that's my Sari Valley. But obviously people's going to think my Sari Valley, no, it's common, it's suggestive, it's all that, because it is. But if I don't go that extra...
But it's playing with it.
It's playing with this, it's word spelling, and also then a side note is that it's playing with this thing of culture and tradition of Maisari, Mare, the old thing. Everybody's going to think it's going to be a song that's like Flerke, and I even did Hasi Hop last year, the old El Debo song. Everybody's going to think it's a nuutskepping, soos hulle in Afrikaans sê. It's not a translation, it's a new version of the song being just modernized. But it's not. I really tried here to write a story that'll be something meaningful to somebody. I say there that she's coming home because she's longing to talk Afrikaans. That's why she's coming to South Africa.
And that's a lot of people's story.
That's a lot of people's story. I make sure that in each verse I write something unique to something meaningful to somebody. And that's how I think through reading all this deep philosophical things, I am able to manage the satire, but the realness of life in between. And I really pride myself in, or I'm proud of this one specifically, being able to write something that's comical, but also something meaningful. That's a very, very fine line to tread on, because something can be meaningful and then it's too deep and then it won't hit home.
Yes.
But we're at a stage in South Africa and the economy and everything that's going around politically, internationally even, it's in a stage of turmoil. So all we want to do is forget. But I don't think we must get lost and just have fun and party and be crazy. We still need to root ourselves in where we're from and something a little bit more meaningful.
Like a combination of joyful and thoughtful.
Joyful and thoughtful. So that's that you put it on the mark there. I now, if it's in the past 2 years, I realized that if I have written like this, satire is very easy, but it's difficult to put the thoughtful and the meaning to it. That's very difficult. But yeah, I hope with Maisari Wale, it's gonna hit home. We will see
I think
what
that's
the people do with it.
A very good art that you have created. I have to say, like in my high school years, me and my friends were listening to Robbie Wessels a lot.
Were you at one of those crazy concerts where I was?
I was at
it was
lot
a
of
good
them.
time, mate.
You went every year. It was a big Graceland show at the golf course and the casino.
Are you from Secunda?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes,
Interesting.
I'm from
Yeah,
Secunda,
we were there a lot.
So I saw you. I've seen you in 2005 playing the bass guitar.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this, but I'm a drummer.
Okay. No,
I
didn't know at
studied
all.
music. I have a grade 8 practical in drums.
Crazy.
And that was also something, of course, that changed due to my accident. I have something very exciting. About just a little bit more than a year ago, I was speaking to the drummer of Van Coke Cartel.
Yeah.
And Fransjo van Coke, his drummer, he was on for an interview. And I told him about this concept that I want to create something that you can either play with your mouth that triggers the bass drum.
Oh, yeah.
And then I got hooked up through my mother, someone at her work who's busy with the University of Cape Town and their engineering students. So one of the students took my case study as a project for this year.
Okay.
So he designed a motor on a kick drum that is triggered by a PlayStation remote that he then converted to basically a chin trigger.
Sure.
Yeah, so...
Is it like a strap you put on, or how does it work?
It's like a back flaky...
Cool. Yeah.
It's like a back flaky
yeah.
mount.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I haven't received it yet, but he's presenting it in November.
Cool.
So that's something that's coming up. I'm very intrigued of it because I want to do it again.
Yeah.
I played drum for about 12 years.
Sure.
So I was very into music. I thought that was what I'll be doing my whole life.
Yeah.
And but that's besides the point. But Robbie Wessels, he also found a really cool way of in his CDs. He would always have that like emotional deep song. Yeah. Combined in with the crazy, funny dance moves and things, and that was also, like you said, you need to be able to get the crowd listening to be able to give them that deep song. Yeah, they need to like you first, and you'll struggle to just get them with the deep song. You need to intrigue them.
Just it changed totally, eh?
Yeah.
Like I constantly talk about this to the people that I'm touring, the sound engineers and the bands that I travel with on the road, is that the difference from then and now is that you were a student, you had a car with a CD player, and you would listen to Robbie Wessels starting out with the Lula, but then you would
the full CD.
The consequence of that is that the CD was in there and you listened to all the other stuff. So you were busy with that stuff. You listened to and you would sing all those songs at the concert. It is a total different ball game today. And Robbie, you're exactly right. Robbie managed to. People sometimes think, oh, it's just Puna, it's just Lula. There was no meaning to that. But yeah, man, the people sang lorry driver and Visserman Vriendstep Prop. It wasn't about me. It was
about the rugby coach. Yeah.
So, but anyway, the people listened to that and it was meaningful. You know how difficult it is today, and I think that's also what I'm thinking now. That's why I changed my writing style to be so adaptive and meaningful now. Because I always used to write about politics and satire and that, but I could never get the fine line in being meaningful and satire, because you can't, even today, you do 3 singles a year, maximum 4, otherwise the fourth one you would waste your money. Literally, the people would, it's not that they have too much of your music. No, of it. It costs a lot of money per song to release, because you need to have the photo shoot, you need to have the recording, sometimes a lyric video, sometimes a video. If you just do a video, if you just do the song with on the Spotify or Apple thing, it's just that people need visual. Even the difference in putting out a lyric video and not. It's not about ratings and being famous, but these stuff needs to pay for themselves.
Yes.
So if you do 4 of them and you just decide the one, I don't have money for the video, you might as well just not do that video, because it's not about you overexposing yourself. People are just too much exposed to music because it's instant, it's in your pocket. Dude.
Yeah, and the what do you call it? To enter. The cost to enter is so cheap, so everyone's doing it. Yeah. Everyone with a mobile phone is making
Everybody's
videos.
making
so
music.
You need to be able to produce something good enough to stand out.
It's way more difficult, and I think the people that win is the people that like Apple and Bok van Blerk still, and even Piesangskillers, the people that grabs your attention by being quirky, but then directly taking you. Vat you terug huis and say, hey, this is not just about, it's meaningful, this is my life. I'm a musician, I'm sharing my life with you, I'm trying to make you realize that there's meaning in this. And because the people that just wants to look cool, they come and go.
I think someone who's done that really well is Spoegwolf. They have like a cult following, and also it's a lot of sad songs, a lot of deep songs,
always
emotional
energy.
songs. Yes, their performance is probably the best in South Africa. Their live shows are just the best. But how did you get the bynaam Prop?
Oh, it's from hoërskool. It's that I'm. It's because I'm short. Then we used to go over weekends on the not rugby tours, athletic tours, where they just need to rent a crowd, or a camp. Then you can just prop all the bags underneath the seat, and I don't need a lot of space. I can somewhere sit on them, because I was a little bit skinnier then as well, and smaller. Then you just prop me in there in the bus. That's how they.
It's a nickname that stuck, eh?
It's a nickname that stuck, yeah.
So, how does the future look for Prop?
Well, I am now. We haven't talked about that, but it's a side note. But what I needed to do, I also needed to pivot, because later in life. Because I studied this architecture thing, and I realized that I am very good at this architecture thing and managing people and doing all those things. So what I did is I realized that private sector architecture takes up a lot of my creative space, and architecture is meaningful to me, but I need to tell my story as a person, just as a person. And generally, I think I can make a difference. The way that I approach life and the way that I do things can be an example for other people. Even if I was not disabled, I would have realized that my personality is just of that some sort that I share easily. I'm not shy, and that I'm the sort of person that wants to make a difference by changing. So by talking to people. So it's a very long strategy that I had. I did this private sector, and then I realized, although I'm going to be able to have a family and have a personal life and a house and children, I'm going to, at the end of the day, become a sour old person, because I'm just going to work for, if you do your own job, 8 to 9, 10 in the evenings, and turn at this and just provide for my family, which is good. But my personality is not like that. I need to have this community of people. I need to contribute somehow to community at large. And being in the private sector is not going to work. So what now? So I decided that I would go to still do architecture, but I work at government currently, which is a whole other ball game. Me and my brother-in-law say it's emotional labor, but somebody has to do it. But that enabled me, because it's a more 8 to 5 regular job. It's not as intensive. It does get intensive, but it's seasonal. It's not constant like the private sector. So that enabled me, since just before COVID, a year or so before COVID, to write more. So my influx went back to writing, and only now I'm starting to get the fruits of that labor of being able to have more time to write, because I learned all the stuff of life and managing people and project management. I learned that during my architecture years. So I still do architecture, but I write more now. So it's a long-term game, but at the end of the day, what I want to do is I want to go back to architecture in the sense that I can perhaps also, like you, we've spoken about it previously, I also want to do flipping houses or perhaps just renting out houses, so that I can have more time, because now I'm working during the week and I'm doing the constant touring.
Yes.
So in the future, the intention is to work more for myself, so that I can and have totally more of my time, not just a little bit less time because I'm now in the governmental sector. But it's small days, it's building up. So I have a single now coming out this year, already busy recording. So what I also need to do is I have to plan far in the future for all my musical stuff to happen. There's a book coming out. Hopefully we're in the process of writing it, me and my mother together, my story from when I was small and all the lessons that was learned. So that's for next year. There's a book. There's, I think, about 3, perhaps 4 singles next year. I just want to, for now, I think it's time for people to see me more, because some people doesn't even realize that I have the first song that I brought out with Kwaiki had 11 other tracks with it. But people don't realize it because they didn't know me. So now I want to rev up my musical output a little bit, not irritate people, just have more music so that people realize this guy is now serious, and hopefully some of the songs become hits. But if they don't, it's just with the intention to have nicer live shows, because the live shows I have like 4 or 3 I think it's 6 singles after my first album. So I have a lot of content now. So my idea is creating more and more content, and on the back of that, creating content and touring more, and hopefully the financial gains comes from that, so that I can have even more financial freedom, or let's say work freedom, so that I can do the property development on the sideline. So that's then how I can, and why you asked me a simple question, but I think it's important to make people realize that it's something that I need to plan for the future, because if we don't plan for it, it's not going to happen by itself. I can say, we want to become a touring musician, I have freedom to tour. It's not. You have to be strategic in life about stuff, and that's why I told the whole story of what's happening in the future. Is that I'm forward planning and I'm manifesting what's going to happen in the future. So the idea is touring, having a little bit less work, office-based work, so that I can and have more family time during the week and over weekends than travel. But there's a way to do it, and I'm trying to structure it and strategize it so it comes there. So hopefully I'm blessed from bringing my part to the party, but you never know. Tomorrow something else happens, and then I totally go in another direction. Then I need to pivot.
That might happen, but that is fine as well.
That's the thing, yeah.
And you are right. You are blessed, and your career is blessed, and I'm sure we're going to see a lot from you. And I really appreciate your time and coming to talk to me. I think your insights were really valuable to me specifically. And I think you have an amazing story to share.
Yeah.
So I'm rooting for you, man.
Thanks, Larry. Thanks for this talk. These sorts of talks are very needed. I love long form, because then there's sort of things, we're going to even listen to it later, and then we realize that, that thing came out, and now more people knows about it. That's worthy.
Yes, and there will, of course, be a lot of things that you wish you said and that you want to still say, and we will definitely do it again.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed our talk. Thank you very much, Prop.
Thanks, Larry. Enjoy.